Are the mics live right now or muted?
I would have been Humpty Dumpty too. Actually, it would have been one of these.
Mics are live.
My phone.
Those are the auditory mics. TV mics are live.
This one says on.
This one does too, but it's not registering anything. John Shear.
Do you want me to get the attention of the soundboard person?
Yeah, if somebody knows how to turn it on, that'd be a good idea.
How the hell do you do that? No.
You got it.
First two slides.
Yep.
I just remember. It's just kind of welcome.
Full mic should be on now too.
Live?
Yeah.
No, they
We're on now, right?
Okay.
These lights are
I
on.
don't think anyone can hear me. That good?
This is the auditorium. Oh, you got it.
Oh.
So you've got this.
Then you're going to come up here and do the screen too?
So when is Mike
All right.
on board?
8 people, 30 people.
Still, was it 7?
All right, let's see if this is. All right, we're going to try to get started. We're going to have our presentation tonight for the sewer project on Route 18. What we'd like to do is we'd like to present the project in 3 phases. My name is Peter Spagone. I'm on the Board of Selectmen with Carol Julius and David Sheedy. I will start the conversation letting the residents that are here and listening at home give them a little history of how we got here and what the project means to East Bridgewater. From there, we'll have Representative Steve Peterson from Weston and Sampson come up and speak more specifically to the district that we're talking about in the area and what the actual layout will be. From that point, we'll have our town administrator, Charlie Seeley, come up and he'll speak to what I think most people are interested in, the numbers. You know, exactly what the project's costs are, where we hope to generate our money from, and our partners that we're involved in on the corridor. So, I've talked about this project for quite a long time now. The project started probably in the late part of 2017 as we worked on a different district. Myself, John Haynes, and a group of people got together to work on the wastewater treatment plant that we currently have at the high school. When they built the high school, we overbuilt the plant with the need for septic for the fire station, or SOAR for this fire station, as well as Central School, which were both in failure. That project was looked at as the potential to not only help out an issue in what we had, but the opportunity across the street from Spring Street down, so from the new CVS to Carriage Crossing, to see if there'd be an opportunity to partner with those businesses to see if we could create some more business in that area, as well as boost up the business we had. What happened to us in that area was CVS came aboard, decided to move down the street, and it moved the project right along. I will say that, you know, the system itself that houses the school, the fire station, and a portion of Central School, the cost was about $550,000 for the plant. Currently, we're over $600,000 in money that we've taken in betterments from that area. So we've had a nice successful rate. That project is completely different than the one we're speaking about this evening. Not only in the aspect that they're not connected, but they also were generated or looked at in two different ways. And I've heard some comments, and I've had some emails and phone calls, what have you, and the story goes, you know, we build it and they come. There was some truth to that on the project that we did with the school system. This is completely not the same type of project. And as we go through this, we'll explain exactly what that means. At the end, we'll have some questions and answers for people here in the audience. We hope to get as much information out as we can, so the more questions you have, the better off it is for us, obviously going into town meeting. This is a town vote. We have 2 articles that will be presented on the warrant next Monday night. We have the district itself, and then, of course, we have the funding to do the connection with the city of Brockton. So, not to go into great detail, but as I said a little while ago, it's been a long road from 2017 all the way up to about 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago when we finally had our IMA with Brockton, our agreement with them to be allowed to connect to their system. The original plan was brought to the table by a resident in East Bridgewater, gave us an opportunity to go to Brockton, speak to them to see if we could do something in the area from Route 18 Whitman line all the way down to Highland Street and across. The corridor would be just on that side of Route 18. If you're going towards Whitman, it'd be on the left-hand side where currently the car wash is, where they're now currently building a new facility on the old Funway area. So this is the area that we're speaking of, but I'll let Steve go into more detail when we get there. So the road to get to where we are tonight. The other thing I've heard quite a bit is, you know, here we are proposing a $11 million project, and we'll give you 6 days to figure out if it's a yes or a no. That's true to some aspect. But to be honest with you, the conversations I've had with the people that run this town, that are on the boards, on the committees, have been ongoing for many months and even into some years. I don't think there's a committee member that's in the audience here today or one that's home listening that hasn't heard me or John or anyone else on our team with the spiel of what this opportunity brings. It just took a long time from the beginning of the process to get to the end of the process. If you watch any selectmen's meetings, and I know Carol's here, and she'll probably laugh at this, but I'm always told the same thing. Slow down, right? We're on municipal time. We're not on contractors' time. It's a different world. It's a difficult world. So what we've done is, in 2017, we sat down with Mayor Carpenter at the time. We started negotiation with him. From the time we started with him to where we got this agreement put in place, a couple of big factors happened. Unfortunately, Mayor Carpenter passed away. We had a new mayor come in, Mayor Sullivan. We had to start with his administration, was completely different, start the process over. And hey, what do you know? We have a pandemic all of a sudden. So take those 2 factors into account, and then we have to start the process, and that's really where we got to this point right now. This opportunity is exactly that. It's an opportunity. I want to right now thank David Sheedy as well as Carol Julius, my colleagues on the board, for working with me. When I came in with this idea to them when I got elected a couple years ago, they had to be convinced. You know, I had to do a lot of convincing that this was the right way to go, the right direction. But at the end of the day, honestly, what this board is doing and what we've tried to do is present to the body opportunities. That's it. We give you an opportunity. We want you to take a look at it. We want you to ask questions about it. And then we want to make a decision about it. And that decision comes next Monday night at the town meeting. So I can go into more detail as we go, but for right now, let's move on to Steve Peterson. He'll give you more information about the district, where it lays out, and then we'll move for Charlie. So, Steve?
Right. Thank you, Peter. Alexa, you can advance that slide. And I think this is the slide that Peter was talking to. So you can go to the next slide. I'm basically going to try and give an overview of what's right now defined as the proposed sewer district and talk about some specifics on the layout of the proposed sewer so everybody kind of understands where we're talking about in town, and actually go into a little detail on some of the key properties. I mean, the basic outline of the district is bordered by the Whitman Town Line, North Bedford Street, and down to Highland Street with with properties on each side of Highland Street. One of the big limiting factors of the size of the district is the amount of flow that the city of Brockton is able to allocate to East Bridgewater. It's not an unlimited amount. You know, it's not something where we're going to, the town's going to have the ability to start sewering all sorts of parts of town. It's very limited to this area. The area here is zoned, you know, commercial, industrial. I assume most of you are familiar with the area that we're talking about. There's a lot of undeveloped land or underdeveloped land in the area, and one of the major limiting factors to be able to use this land to what it was intended for, what it's zoned for, is wastewater disposal options. The soils just can't support it. It's pretty much maxed out with what's there now in this area. And the district really starts with the two projects on either end. On the north side, the green, and then the purple on the south side of the district. Two, you know, larger potential, you know, development opportunities that have been in the works and are currently limited in what they can do based on the sewer capacity. Also, you know, within the district, there's a couple of good-sized vacant, landlocked town parcels that this project will ultimately, hopefully, open up for some potential future use, you know, for the town of that land that's currently really unbuildable, unusable, based on, you know, being landlocked and where it is. So some of the key properties, you know, farthest to the north, you can see these sub-bullets under key properties. We have USC LLC. On the next slide, I'll talk in a little bit more detail about that, but that's some dense, more high-density housing project. All the way down to the south, the purple, you're probably familiar with the Compass Medical, and this is all land owned by Equity Industrial. They have a lot of plans on what they'd like to do with that land, but they're currently maxed out and trying to figure out how they can do the things that land was intended for and not be limited by their wastewater, ability to discharge wastewater. And then we'll also talk about a couple of properties in the middle along the way that are more warehouse type development right now, or proposed as warehouse type development. So you can go to the next slide, Alexa. So the first project is the USC LLC. Basically multifamily housing project. I know the figure on the right here is a little bit small, but this kind of just gives you, this is Bedford Street, North Bedford Street on this side over here, and this particular parcel goes all the way through to Winter Street. So the current proposal for this property is to do some townhouses up on the north piece and then some larger apartment buildings on the Bedford Street side of the parcel. And these projects are all in some phase of permitting or approval through the town. You know, none of these are locked in yet, but they're trying to advance those, and this, you know, wastewater component is one of the things that's critical to them advancing. So there's just some kind of renderings here of, you know, what the townhouses up on the Winter Street portion would look like under the current proposal, and then the actual rental apartment buildings. It's 4 buildings, 1, 2, 3, 4 in this area here. You know, as far as this specific project is right now proposed as a local initiative project. They are in the process of going before boards in town. They have a proposal in front of the town. 25% of the units in this project would be affordable housing. Within that, the occupancy preference provisions, you know, basically give, you know, town residents or town employees preference if they meet the the criteria for the affordable portions. So like I said, it's 25% of the units fall under that category. And if you're, again, familiar with the area, it is in close proximity, so across the street, Route 18 is an existing 40B, and again, right up near the Whitman town line. So that's one of the cornerstone projects that we're looking at. And we can go to the next slide. So on the other side, you may be familiar with the existing Compass Medical Facility. And so all of this land, so obviously that's a picture of Compass. And then this is kind of their site plan that they've been working with for some time. And again, they're limited in being able to continue to develop it. So I think this is the existing Compass Medical that we're looking at on the picture up here. The proposal in front of them now is to put in a 120-bed, 80,000 square foot facility here, right behind the Compass. That's kind of always the use that's been envisioned out there. That's what it's zoned for and intended for. They cannot build that facility with a local on-site septic system. They need some kind of either large-scale treatment plant of their own or some kind of sewer option in order to be able to do that. And they have continued future plans to the side over here for an outpatient facility, as well as maximizing what they can do with the existing facilities, the Compass Medical and the Hart Hanks. So those are kind of the two anchor projects that are very interested in the ability to connect to a sewer system. The next slide just kind of talks about some of the others. So I mentioned the warehousing. So this is Highland Street down here with North Bedford out here. So this is near the corner. Rhino Development, they're looking to put in a 400,000 square foot warehouse industrial space building, which is a good sized building. Between the project on the north side is going to provide housing for the town, and this project is obviously going to generate jobs as well as is the work on the equity property on the other side of Highland. Those are some of the key themes that you'll hear is housing and jobs that these projects would potentially provide. And then I so I already mentioned the vacant town land. The future use is completely to be determined. To my knowledge, there's been no discussion of what the town would want to do with that. They just, this would afford them the availability to start having those discussions, and whether it's simply, ball fields or parks or something that actually generates water use, they would have the sewer there and the access vehicularly to get to the property. So those are the key players, and that's kind of the definition of the district. We can go to the next slide. Talk a little bit about, so how are we going to get the sewer from this area to the city of Brockton? So the scope of the next slide will be a map, so I'll kind of go through some of the details here. We're looking at about 8,300 linear feet of gravity sewer, which would be a pipe coming from Highland Street through the properties that we just highlighted, the colored properties that we highlighted, towards the Whitman line to a pump station on the property on the north there, the US CLLC property, which would be near Route 18 and near the Whitman line. And then there would also be some gravity sewers running from the town houses at the north part of the project down to the pump station. And then there will be a force main, about 14,300 linear feet of dedicated force main that then would run out to Winter Street, to Summer Street, Thatcher Street, and then once you cross the Brockton line on Thatcher Street, it's about 1,400 feet to the existing interceptor, which Brockton has confirmed to have the capacity. We would connect to the interceptor, and then that would flow down to the treatment plant in the city of Brockton. So if you go to the next slide, you can see it a little more graphically, what I was talking about. So the, hopefully you can see it all right. So the proposed pump station is up in this corner here. Again, all the green is the gravity collector sewers, you know, the initial part of the project to bring sewer to the pump station. And then I refer to dedicated force main out to the city of Brockton. You know, so the force main that leaves the pump station is not something that's intended or designed for connections. Properties are not going to be able to connect to the force main. That is under pressure and is solely to transport the wastewater from the pump station to the city of Brockton. So that's the initial layout of the proposed sewer. So we can go to the next slide. So as far as the projected costs, we've worked, or the budgeted costs, you know, we've worked with the town. We've come up with total budget all-in cost right now of $11 million, which includes the biggest ticket being the cost of construction of the project, also with the contingency, public safety, you know, police details for the work that will require that, primarily the work in the streets, construction oversight, land and legal issues. We've got a lot of private property that we're crossing as part of this project, and then just general administrative costs. So that's kind of the numbers that go into that. And Charlie, I think Charlie was going to come up and kind of talk to, you know, how this cost is projected to be allocated. So we can go to the next slide.
As Steve mentioned, the $11 million is our gross cost, and it's a number that we've upped during the last few months given the inflationary environment, especially in terms of construction costs. We do not want to come to you a week from now, and if successful, go out to bid later this year, and then find out the bids are too high and have to come back to you in the fall for any number of different reasons. It would delay the project. We don't want to have two votes. We'd like just to have one. But that was our intention. I think we were looking at a lower number a few months ago, but given everything, being conservative, we'll be asking for the $11 million. That's the gross cost, though. What we're hoping to do is lower that cost. First, through sewer betterments with the property owners who will be using this sewer connection. We, at this point, already have a letter of intent that's been worked out with equity for $3 million. We're up to, and that's a letter of intent. That's not a contract, but it's not binding. But nevertheless, what it shows is that equity is interested in this project, interested in putting money into this project. That would help, obviously, defray the $11 million. We're working with other property owners in the district for similar agreements for different amounts of money. But we're hoping to raise between $5 million and $6 million in betterment fees to offset the gross cost of the project. In addition, we are going to be applying next month for a MassWorks infrastructure grant for between $2 million and $3 million. This is a statewide program. It's a competitive program, but we have a reasonable shot at obtaining this grant. Why? Because we're looking at jobs and we're looking at housing, which are the two major criteria that the state wants to see if it's putting money into infrastructure projects like this. That's why it's important that we be connecting to all these projects. It's not just a commercial only. If it was only commercial, we'd be less likely to be getting a grant. The housing helps a lot. I mean, there are other reasons for having housing here, but it helps in terms of just the grant. Again, that will help, if received, it will help offset the gross cost, therefore lowering the net cost for the town and then the net cost for the principal and for the interest payments that we'd be taking out for the bond that we would eventually take out. If we didn't receive any of this money at all, none of the betterments, not a grant, and we were going to be paying $11 million, the first year of principal and interest on the bond would be $990,000. However, we are going to be going, obviously with this, the housing project, the commercial projects, we will be getting additional tax money above and beyond what we're getting right now. Talking with Paul Wolf, the principal assessor here in East Bridgewater, our estimate is that once these projects are completed, and only these 4, we certainly would welcome and encourage other projects to be built in the district because we still have a little capacity available for those. Would be $1.7 million, just those 4. So you can see already, even without grants, even without betterment fees, we're ahead of the game. We'll be bringing in $1.7 million of tax money above and beyond what we're doing right now, and we'll be paying just a hair under $1 million in principal and interest. So the project, even without those additional sources, will pay for itself. I know one of the questions that keeps coming up is, well, what about the school system? I mean, you get 240 units of housing built, 60 of which are affordable, 180 are going to be at market. That's going to just jam the school system. Again, working with East Bridgewater Public Schools, working with John and Liz, what the estimate is between 60 and 70 students from that 240 unit development. That's based on other developments of similar sizes, similar context, 5 to 6 students per grade. And you can imagine with over 2,000 students here in the East Bridgewater Public School System, they can absorb 60 or 70 students. Our school population several years ago was above 2,300. We're now below 2,100. So the school system will be able to do it. Obviously, there are always incremental costs, but it's not a situation where we'll be having major increases in costs simply due to this number of students. There are flow limitations as part of this proposal, obviously. Brockton has its own interests, its own developments. And so when the city council met and approved the IMA last month, they were very specific. It's $75,000. If you want to come back to us, you certainly are welcome to do so. But you're going to have to get the approval of the city council along with the mayor for any changes. That's why the district is restricted to that geography. It's that size. And if someone is concerned, well, you've got one housing development, they're going to keep piling in, and no. One housing development is going to use a large share of this 75,000 gallons per day. We will not be able to add a second development of something of a similar size to this district, within the district, without going over, and we won't be able to go over. It's simply not going to be possible unless we go to the city of Brockton and get permission, and if the development is outside of the bounds of the current district that's being proposed, coming back to you and getting your okay to change the size of the district. So what we're left with right now is a vote, 2 votes at town meeting next week. One, creation of the district itself. It requires special legislation. If approved, it will go up to Boston. We'll ask our legislative delegation to work on that on our behalf, hoping to get that done either before they get out of session in the middle of July or else later this year. But the second vote, obviously, is the authorization, the borrowing authorization next week for the $11 million. And that's a 2/3 vote because we'll be borrowing money under state statute. It's a 2/3 vote, not a majority. If successful next week, we'll move along with the completion of the design of the permitting in summer of 22, go out to bid, start the construction this fall, end the construction by December of 2023, and be able to start connecting up. with everyone. Peter, do you want to take over?
All right, thank you, Steve. Thank you, Charlie. So that's our overview. Obviously, what we want to do is save some time for people to ask questions. I'm sure you have many of them. The last slide, if it's up there right now, basically gives some pointers. I think there was a handout that you had, I'm pretty sure, of bullet points that we have. I guess what I'd say at this point is for everyone to understand is it hasn't just been 2 or 3 or 4 individuals that have worked on this project for a number of years. There's been a full team of people that have been involved every step of the way, and a lot of the people that are here tonight are people that have worked with us. You know, the Board of Selectmen is the authority on this project, but at the end of the day, the departments that we work with, the departments that run the town, are the ones we lean on. And I can tell you this, you know, going back and looking at some of the comments that I've got over the course of the last 6 months, year, has been, you know, the revolving door, so to speak, of different departments and different people in different departments, especially in our financial department. I can tell you with all honesty, it's been a pleasure to see us bring in people that are here to help move East Bridgewater forward. Charlie being one of those people. We've got right now the strongest financial team that I've seen, and I've been involved in politics here for about 20 years. So, you know, the infrastructure that goes along with this project afterwards, I can surely tell you we've got the team in place, from the financial team to the building and planning team to the fire team, the police, DPW, and certainly the schools. We also have representation, which is very good. Ones, as you know, we know that these grants aren't guaranteed. You know, that's a given. But we've been very successful in the past. We had a nice grant that was brought our way for the system we did over at the school. Today, I know I spoke to Allison Sullivan, our state rep. I know she's in the audience here today, and she's already given her commitment to partner with us. The One Stop Grant is also worked with OCPC, Old Colony Planning Council. Mary Walden, I got to mention how much time she spent with us in order to move this project forward. So we've had tremendous amount of help and support. As we go through these questions and answers, I particularly probably in most of those questions, not the person that will be able to answer them, it will be those team members. So as we go forward, I would like to just have everybody keep in mind that, you know, this is a commodity. This is something that Brockton took very seriously. There's been other towns in our region that have asked for the same type of help from Brockton with SOAR, and they've been turned away. They've been turned away for not just the reasons that Brockton didn't want to just give it to them, but the projects that they were proposing weren't the type of projects that the city of Brockton and the surrounding towns were looking for. And we tap back to that jobs and housing. You know, it comes from the state all the way down, and that's what we have here in front of us. Again, you know, we look forward to seeing if the town's interested in this, and for right now I would say, you know, if we have some questions, that would probably be very helpful to get some answers out there to the residents as well. There we go. All right.
I cannot believe, where is that apartment building going to be exactly? Number one. Number two, that amount of traffic on Route 18, which is already a nightmare, the overflow of students in every single school, buses. I can't believe that we're even considering putting in an apartment complex of that size. There's nothing else that we could vote on, because that, where will it be?
Okay. So you've asked a lot of questions in that in that one question. Let's take it piece by piece. You know, 2 of our partners on each end of this project are here with us tonight. Rob Sorbelli, who's running the project down on the housing project, and Jimmy Knight, who's working with Equity on the project at the Compass, I always call it the Compass area, down that area, are both here as well. So I can tell you, without asking either one of them, would you do something else in that area? You know, it's up to the builder in what the market determines is the best possible use for that area. I would say, Charlie, yeah, I mean, just to talk about the housing piece and where it goes, and then I'll ask John Shea, who will answer your question on the schools and what the effect of that will be as well.
So under state law, cities and towns are supposed to have 10% of their housing units devoted for affordable housing with certain stipulations and restrictions and such. We're not anywhere close to 10% here in East Bridgewater. We're more like 3 or 4%. So a Chapter 40B, as it's called, an affordable housing project with 25% of the units being priced at affordable levels. And I'll give you an idea of what's affordable under this project. Affordable means a sale price for a condo of about $287,000. It means a one-bedroom at about $1,500 for rent, $1,800 for 2 bedrooms, a little under $2,100 for 3 bedrooms. You're not going to have somebody who has no income being able to afford this. The income limits are there, obviously, in connection that these are the maximum incomes. But someone with no income is not going to be able to walk in and be able to afford a mortgage, be able to pay taxes, be able to pay rent. These units are going to be owned and rented by people who are working here in East Bridgewater or in the area. They're going to be, in some cases, your children. They're going to be, in some cases, possibly your parents or other relatives. And you can imagine somebody who's earning, let's say, $70,000, they can afford one of these. They can't afford the market rate, which is, let's say, $500,000 for a condo at market rate now. They can't afford to live in East Bridgewater at that price. But you'll have people who will be able to do so coming to East Bridgewater, who maybe even are living here right now and need a better place to live.
So where exactly will this be? Where exactly will this be built off of?
So there is a slide here, I believe, let's see. Let me get to page 4. Next slide, please. You'll see, this is the map.
Can't hear you.
Sorry. So the map there, you'll see 4 villages over on the right-hand side, right on Bedford Street. Those are 4 40-unit apartment buildings. That's the 160 apartments. Over on the west side of it, at the far end, are the 80 condos. It'd be 40 duplexes, so 40 times 2 is 80 units of condos there. That's where it would be built. And I earlier,
Realize the amount of traffic that's going to.
yeah. Any of these projects, including the housing project, require traffic studies and also traffic mitigation. If in fact there will be bringing in the additional traffic will change our traffic patterns on Route 18. Doesn't matter whether it's a housing development like this one or commercial development. When the original Compass Medical was built, there were traffic improvements made along that section of Route 18. If they build additional units there, additional buildings there, or we have the housing development, that's part of the project. What happens with an affordable housing project is that the project needs to be permitted through the town still. Someone can't just simply walk in and say, gimme, gimme, gimme. There is negotiation, there is a permit process with the Zoning Board of Appeals. So that, and as part of that process, the ZBA can bring in consultants to study things such as the traffic patterns. And if we need improvements in that area, that we can add those. One of the things that's happened even just this past week is that John Haynes and his counterpart over in Bridgewater have been in contact with OCPC about doing a corridor study from the Whitman line all the way down to Central Square in Bridgewater. It's long-term, but I agree with the amount of development we're talking about on Route 18, it's time for us to be looking at Route 18 for that corridor and saying, what do we want to be able to do with that road by itself, let alone the developments. So we have some irons in the fire to, in fact, look at traffic and make improvements so that whatever traffic impact the commercial developments or the affordable housing project will have, we can mitigate those traffic impacts. I don't know if John wants to come up to talk a little bit about the school. I mentioned that the numbers earlier, but those numbers came from him. They're not out of pie of the sky. They're not, I just decided to write something on the back of an envelope. This is after consultation with the people who know what they're doing in this business.
Thank you. Nancy, what's your exact question on the schools?
Mostly, I'm very concerned with the overflow of schools. And I know that you're thinking, okay, there's only going to be this amount, but it's not. If kids are going to keep filling up these schools, buses, supplies, we are already so overburdened. I can't believe that we're going to put in an apartment building with all that many more children, not to mention the fact that I don't see that it will bring that great big of a revenue to East Bridgewater with rental properties. There has to be a better way. And I'm concerned about the school system.
Okay, based upon my estimates, we're looking, and I looked at it 4 different areas, national statistics, current housing in East Bridgewater, and also I took a look at a similar project, same number of units, also 25% affordable care. We're looking at anywhere from 35 to 60 additional students. And 60 additional students, of course, is going to be an impact. You're looking at 60 additional Chromebooks. You're looking at, changing the bus routes. There will be an impact to the schools. But like Charlie said, 5 years ago, we had 2,300 kids in our school district. Today, we have 2,100. Each year, we're losing students. We're down 200 kids from 5 years ago. So the 60, I don't think we're saying that there's not going to be an impact, but yes, there definitely will be an impact to the schools.
So my question is this the only idea that we have to vote on? Is this particular apartment building?
Are you talking as a town member now, and not the school district? This is a portion of a larger project, commercial project, that is going to, it appears to me that it's going to bring in a lot of additional revenue. As a town member for 50 years now, I've heard year after year after year, we don't have the business in town. We need more business. Every year when we come to fight for budgets, it always comes up. There's no business in town, we don't have the revenue.
Business though. That basically it's not. It's an overflow to this small little community that I just feel that this is really, I'm shocked. I am.
Okay, so, thanks, John. Yeah, I mean, so first of all, we aren't building it, right? So the developer that's in that area is building it. So they come to us and they give us the idea, and when I say us, I don't mean the Board of Selectmen, I mean the Planning Board, the Zoning, Conservation, Board of Health. There's a full gamut of things they need to go through before they can do that. So it's on the contractor, on the owner of that property. Can he build this type of project without the SOAR, at least at this sizes? No, you can't. But can he build a half to 3/4 of this without the SOAR? Absolutely. Builds a source, his own wastewater treatment plant there to do that. So it's not a question if he can do it. It's just a question of, are we going to work with that contract, or are we not going to work with it? But I think a bigger point is, there's a lot of articles on the warrant coming up. There's some that, me and you've spoken about, that are about accepting those roads and things of that nature. And when I looked at some of the projects we have coming up on us, that would be fixing the roads. That costs money. Obviously, fixing the infrastructure in some other areas we have, bridges and things of that nature. That costs money. But more importantly, what you're going to be seeing, what you're going to be hearing about, I think, and I could be wrong, but I feel pretty confident is the Central School, right? So that project's coming along the line at some point. So I thought what we needed to do, what the board thought we had to do was, to find ways to get more revenue, get more income into the town of East Bridgewater. And the only area I can see that happening in is this area. Again, the proposals are by the owners of those properties, and we've just got to make a decision if we're going to work with them or if we're not. And the vote we're having, or the vote we're taking, isn't if this is happening, right? We're not voting on that on Monday. What we're voting on is, are we going to put in a sewer system and service that whole area? Are we going to not just do the housing project, but are we going to look at the other commercial? Because 25% of this project that we're looking at is housing. 75% of it is commercial. And we look to see, and I don't even want to talk about the potential outside of what we're calling our direct partners, the ones that we talked about tonight that are on the sewer line. I could sit here for 3 hours and talk about the conversations I've had with Frank over at the Mockingbird, with a system that he's concerned about. Bobby D at Bobby D Motors has been here for 50 years, that has opportunities now that he didn't have. We got the gravel pit on the corner, right? Everybody's seen that big gravel pit that they finally moved the dirt out of. Mr. Frabowski must have called us 15 times about that area over there. They can't do anything, but now there's some opportunities. So, I understand your point, and I agree with it. There's pros and cons and everything. You just got to kind of weigh that out as you go. All right? Sure. You want to come down and so everybody can hear you, or you want to scream? All right.
Water in town.
Okay.
This is all wastewater.
Yep.
We still have to bring water in town. And our pumping stations are older.
Okay.
So what, do we have to rehab those? Do we have to go deeper? We haven't got, that's going to be another expense.
Okay.
That's not even added into here. Are they going to have artesian wells to farm over there themselves? Are they going to be paying for their own water?
All right.
That's not what it used to be.
Sure. All right, Mr. Chair, I got an answer for you. I got an answer, and I got somebody in the room that is with our water department, that water commissioner, that will come down and he'll explain, because he's been in all the meetings. Yeah. He's been with us all the way. Jason, do you mind coming down and explaining where we are?
Well, you need water.
Absolutely, I agree, and I think his explanation will help clear that up.
Your question about the water now?
Yeah, could you turn that on this one?
Try this one over here, Jason.
Need to get closer, Jason.
Is it on, maybe not?
Is this on?
Yes.
Hey.
Yeah, your question about the water now, do we have enough to supply this? Yes.
Will the pump stations need to be rehabbed and to upgraded? No, they won't. We're constantly doing that anyways, over the years, upgrading all of our pump stations to get more water out of them.
Coming out of the faucets and everything else, and a lot of people here could probably say the same thing, because it's being over-chlorinated. When you can smell it that much, it's bad.
That's it runs out of our plants at about 0.50 milligrams per liter.
It used to be, and I'm just afraid that this is going to even hurt more of our water.
This project will not.
What about the new well that you're looking for funding to drill?
So that well was put in, I believe, in 1966. Okay, that was pumping 725 gallons a minute. As the life expectancy of that well, it's depleted. It is now only pumping 175 gallons a minute. So yeah, so it's basically, we're replacing that to, and this has nothing to do with this project here. This was already in the works. I've been working on this project for a number of years with our engineers and drilling a well, looking for more water. Because we do have a meter that goes to Brockton, and we only try to use that for emergencies. So we try and be self-sufficient and the water quality.
Think about getting water from Brockton. The pumping station is right down the street. Well, they're lines go right through East Bridgewater. I mean,
But I would like to. That would increase your rates. So I would like to try and keep those rates for the residents low.
In regards to the water tower on Highland Street, is that going to generate enough pressure to flush all these toilets and hydrant-wise and everything?
Yes, that we will be, in probably a number of years now, we're going to be looking at another water tower. That one's going to need to be rehabbed. It's either we have to paint it or we have to get another one. The outside of that has lead paint, so it will totally have to be encapsulated. All that lead paint will have to be taken off. And that's going to be a significant cost. So it's over 50 years old now, that tower. And this is probably a conversation for another time, but that is coming down. That is all on our master plan that we have had done for us a number of years ago.
So that would be a bigger tower that you would put in. Saying that because if all that additional water is going to go there, am I going to start getting lousy pressure to my house?
No. You
All right, thanks, Jason.
If anybody has any other questions, feel free to reach out to me. Every year we do rehabs to our pumping stations. So we rehab them. What we do is we do a chemical cleaning and a pump. Because of the iron and manganese is so bad in town, we have to clean these wells. Station number 5, for instance, that one is done every year because it's so bad. It actually, at the end of a rehab, it pumps 550 gallons a minute. At the end of the year, when I go to get that rehabbed again, we're all the way down to 275 gallons a minute because it's so plugged up in the screens. So we are on a, every couple years they're done to some of them, and every year they're done to Station 5. Yes.
Because I know we have one closed down for a while.
Which one?
It was around Crescent Street someplace. We have one that was idle there for a while.
Yeah, so Station 3, there's actually 2 pumping stations there. And those, they were taken offline due to getting rehabbed. So this year, Station 3 was done, Station 1 was also done, and Station 5.
Shallow wells, so?
They were about 65 feet.
65, so, yeah. Thank you.
Yep.
So question for Jason, if I thank you. Available on the DEP website is the 2019 annual drinking water quality report. Is the 2020 or the 2021 report available?
The 2020 is available on our website. So if you go onto the DPW's website, it is there.
I found 2019, but I did not find anything more recent.
Yeah, it is there. Someone had the same question, and I actually pulled it up, and I was like, "Oh, it's right there." If you go onto the DPW website, you scroll down, it's on the main screen. You might have been clicking on water department screen, but it is on the main screen of the website.
Or we could just send you an email and you could send it to us.
And it also is on your bill. If you go on that, if you look on your bill, it's
You can type in that URL, and that will take you right to it. You're welcome.
Yep. Yeah, go ahead, yeah.
Patty Wolf, Laurel Street. My question is, the project is $11 million. That I understand. I'm looking at the finances here. You state that we will be collecting $1.7 million a year in local property taxes. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. And then it says that the town expects to receive $5 to $6 million in betterment assessments. Now, is that over the life of, you know, like 25 years, or is that an upfront charge to these corporations, or how does that work?
That's a good question. So, Charlie, if you want to jump in there, because you're going to, so just to get to those betterments, we have a formula that is based on flow. So whatever the flow is, that's how we get to the calculations. I'll let Charlie go into the IMA we have, excuse me, I keep on IMA. The agreement that we have with Equity right now, that we've got a letter of intent with them, and then a little bit about you know, where we're going to go with the housing project and what we propose you know, we're going to do with them as well. So it's a calculation, but you know, I'll let actually it looks like Fran's going to answer that portion for you.
Okay. At all possible, try not to use acronyms. Like you just said something about an IMA. I don't know what that
Oh yeah, there was an agreement. Yeah, so just the agreement. The letter of intent is intend to pay us, right?
I think the question was, how do betterments work? And the $5 to $6 million, and I'll explain. And the answer to the question is it upfront payment or is it over time? And I guess the answer, it could be a little flip, is yes. So that the way the betterments work, or proposed to work here, there's a couple of ways you can do it in towns. One is the lot size, frontage, and the unit rule, which is basically flow, the amount of flow that a property is going to put out. And those numbers are determined up front, so they are in fact an upfront number. However, those costs can be apportioned over time by the properties that are being improved or bettered by the fact that they now have sewer service. And the way the apportionment works is the town is going to be paying, according to what Charlie's told you, probably right now around 4% interest on a bond. And the town can then, on top of that, add up to 2% more than the cost of the bond. So the town, or if the property owner elects, they could elect to pay it over time, over 20 years, which would be the life of the bond, and the two would be coterminous, and they could pay a bond rate, whatever the annual cost is, and it could be 4.5%, 5%, as much as 6%. So the town is not only covering the cost of the bond at 4%, they're actually charging a little bit more to cover the town's handling costs. So in a way, the property owner decides if they want to pay it all up front, which is fine, or to pay it over time. It's either or.
And to follow that up as well, you know, one of the biggest concerns we had was the first couple of years of payments, right? So we want to make sure that we can pay the bond while we're waiting to collect taxes on buildings that need to be built. So in the negotiations and when we spoke to them, both Equity right now and Rob, we've said the same thing. You know, the upfront costs will be what we need to make sure we secure the payments while we're waiting for the projects to be done so we can start to collect revenues for those projects. So that's all been taken into consideration for sure. Yep.
So let's say this passes at town meeting next week.
Sure.
And we let this guy build his apartment buildings and his condos, and we let Compass Medical build a hospital, outpatient, whatever you want to call it. So now you have 240 units and whatever, 120 beds at the hospital, and everybody's tied into the storage now.
Nobody else builds anything else. That's all we get out of this whole entire thing. Are we ever going to go over 75,000 gallons to Brockton? And if we do, how does that get paid? And also, how is all of that going to affect the first responders? Are we going to have to hire more to cover all these new people who are going to be living here? Those types of things.
Charlie, I think you can start, and if you wanted to talk to, I know Tim Herron, our fire chief, is here, can speak to what the benefits of and the pros and cons, I guess I should say, for the fire department as well as the police. So we've got, everybody well represented as far as departments, so I'll let them speak about it. But Charlie, you can certainly start with your first part of that question.
The projected 75,000 includes, of course, more than just those two projects, in that, as you saw on the various slides, we're expecting development. For instance, the warehouse facility that's already being built, they will be able to come in and connect to this sewer system also. So, and there may be other properties, obviously, than those four that we've been talking about. If we don't hit 75,000, then we'll divide it into two pieces here. There's the capital costs that we're doing with the bond. And I think we've made the case tonight that we will be able to pay for those capital costs, the principal and interest on the bond. For the operating costs will be covered by, in fact, the ratepayers, the folks who are using the system. So that whatever we're being charged by Brockton and whatever operating expenses we have here in East Bridgewater for operating the sewer connection, we'll charge a rate just like we charge for water rates, sufficient to cover the expenses, the operating costs on an annual basis. You asked the question, what happens if we go over? In the intermunicipal agreement with the city of Brockton, there's a penalty clause. If we go over on a regular basis to 75,000 gallons per day, then yes, we're going to pay more money. But that money is going to be paid through the rate fees. We're not going to be charging everybody else in town for the additional sewage. We're obviously going to be very interested in not having that happen, simply because we want to maintain a good relationship with the city of Brockton. I mean, setting aside the money issue for a moment, if at some point we're interested in increasing the amount of flow going to Brockton and want to work with them on a new intermunicipal agreement, the worst thing we can do is set up a situation that we're constantly going over that limit. But that means working with the property owners, making sure that what we see as the flows for each of these projects, adding them up and trying to ensure that we're going to stay under that 75,000. Mind you, we want to come close. We want to be able to use the capacity. Because one of the things the city said to us is, we're not interested in giving you capacity you're not going to use. Let's see if you're going to use that 75,000, and if you do, you can come back to us if you're interested in increasing it. But first, let's work on that 75,000. The fire chief's here. He can speak to the possible increase in calls. Obviously, we're going to see a population increase in town, but is it going to be significant enough, along with the Compass Medical Facility, to generate a need for additional personnel, number of calls, and everything else? I don't think it's all shadows out there. There he is. Come on.
People who are tied in, the people who pay for it, not me. That's what we're saying. Thank you.
Sorry, I stepped out for the question, but for the housing units, we're anticipating there will be an additional 750 residents, which will be approximately 160 calls more per year on top of what we're doing now. Last year we did 2,643 calls divided by 14,000 residents was like 0.19 calls per resident. So with 14,750, we'd be doing about 2,803 calls. That was just for the housing project. On average, we go to Compass once a day, or about 400 times a year to Compass Medical. I sat in a meeting where they talked about this facility where they're going to have 120 beds, how many ambulance runs they're expecting out of that, and they said that it would be minimal. So going with that, I'm thinking maybe 50. If they build another entire Compass Medical suite or an outpatient surgery clinic, maybe another 400 calls per year, which is fine. At the current town meeting next Monday, my budget requested additional manpower, 4 more members beginning in October. I also applied for a federal grant for those 4 firefighters, which would cover 100% of their salaries for 3 years. But if we don't get that grant, through town meeting, hopefully we'll be able to get the additional manpower anyways. So I don't foresee there'll be an increase that we won't be able to handle in the short term. But having said that, there's a lot of development going on, not only in this side of town, but in the northeast side of town too, that eventually, may require us to have to increase our manpower, but I don't see that in the short term.
Exactly what they were, but in terms of additional permanent jobs for these different facilities, does anybody have those figures?
Yeah, we've estimated, and it was in the flyer, but maybe it wasn't. Somewhere additionally, 400 to 500 jobs, and that would be up and down the scale from white collar to blue collar. You've got the obviously you've got the medical unit where nurses and doctors and things of that nature, and then you've got the warehousing aspect of it as well. So somewhere in that area. We've also talked to Equity about the opportunity, and even Rhino, who's the one that's proposing the warehouse, to have further discussions about jobs for, percentage for East Bridgewater residents, So, and that housing project too, I don't know if we mentioned that, but obviously the affordable housing is a lottery, right? Is that's true? And I'm going to make sure I'm not saying anything out of turn here, but and a percentage of that lottery gets moved up to residents of East Bridgewater as well. So there's definitely bonuses to the citizens here. And the other part is, look, we're definitely going to need the help of state reps like Allison Sullivan, who is here, to help us get grant money. But, we really can't do that without having all these aspects, the job portions of it, the housing portions of it. So, we think we're really checking all the boxes to put ourselves in a really good position.
All right, so you said 300 or 400, right?
Somewhere in that.
And then you have close to another 400 for both projects on the housing and the apartments.
I'm talking about, sorry.
No, not yours. I'm talking about people. How are they getting it? That means they're driving, right? So if you take a lowball figure and then Compass jumps in here, you could be talking almost 700 vehicles a day, which doesn't even include deliveries being made to the houses, all this construction trucks that are going to be running up and down Island Street and whatnot. It's going to be a nightmare. So it's safety factor. I already know what the figure is for the firemen. They want 4 more additional things, and probably coming back for another piece of equipment too. But that's even before the police get there. But I'm on the same idea as her. Route 18 can't handle that situation.
So as Sally, when we did, John Haynes, and I can let John talk a little bit more. He's done some of these traffic studies before with OCPC, but furthermore from there, we've already had discussions with Equity as well as the transit unit of Old Colony Planning, and they've already started discussions with Equity on the medical building on getting transportation, other means of transportation in and out of that facility as it grows. So, we're looking at every aspect of trying to control as much as we can. We certainly can't control it all, but if John, if you wouldn't mind coming up, just, I know you've been involved with some of these traffic situations before. You can talk a little bit about what we've done, because we've taken that into consideration for sure, and we feel like we are on the right path to at least help the situation as best we can.
Evening. So yes, to your point, we're all familiar with the heavy congested traffic on Route 18, but I think when we talk about 600 to 700, 800 more vehicle trips a day, I think we need to realize that currently there's 23,000 vehicle trips a day on that corridor of Route 18. Traffic on the South Shore it's a thing we are all dealing with, and that's why we're trying to be very proactive, previous even to these individual projects coming forward, to recognizing that that corridor needs significant study, and with study hopefully comes improvement. The thing we need to remember is that corridor is under the jurisdiction of Mass DOT. Route 18 is a state highway. So the work we do here is essentially puts us in position to encourage the redevelopment work on Route 18. You've seen it, the current project that's underway on our southern section, or our middle section of Bedford Street here. That's a state-funded reconstruction project nearing completion. Happy to say it's actually far ahead of schedule. It was originally scheduled to be 4 years of construction. We're looking at approximately 2.5, and it'll be wrapped up this spring. Part of all of these individual projects, when they do come before the town in the state for approval, is a full comprehensive traffic study for the impacts of the individual projects. So the Rhino Development project, the large warehouse, is already had a traffic study provided as part of its approval process. The town actually went one step beyond that and utilized our own engineering consultant firm to evaluate the findings of the applicant's study to make sure there's validity to it. Every project that comes along will still be a standalone project. Its impact to the corridor will be evaluated on its own. But what we, Town Administrator Siegel alluded to earlier, is we've recognized this, and we're working with Old Colony Planning to get ahead of all of this and have some foresight about what we're going to see. We are seeing, sprawl from Boston come down to the South Shore. It's a fact of life. We need to be ahead of it. We need to do our due diligence and work on that and identify, but we need to identify it with looking at opportunities. This is an incredible opportunity for the town of East Bridgewater. It comes with, as all things do, pros and cons. But at the outset, at the end of the day, at the end of all of this, we need again to look at this. This is an opportunity. I think John Shea spoke to it earlier. Those of us who've been part of this town for 40, 50 plus years have continually heard we don't have any commercial base. We don't have regular, sustainable, reoccurring revenue. We don't, that commercial base, the burden is entirely upon those of us that live here. And this is an opportunity to begin to alleviate some of that. And with it do come some of these concerns. And that's why we're looking at the entire Route 18 corridor with Old Colony Planning Council. Old Colony Planning Council does the planning for the region. So they look at regional impacts. So it's a really great opportunity to utilize their expertise and work that into a long-term plan. Because we're talking about a particular corridor of North Bedford Street. That development will continue through East Bridgewater, Lakeville, Middleborough. That corridor is going to develop. I think we've all seen the studies, and we see the future. That's the demand for housing along these corridors. It's there. It exists, and we're looking at trying to offset. A project of this scope is 25% of this. I think Peter said is a housing component. Affordable housing is a significant need in the town of East Bridgewater. The other portion of this, 75% of this project, is commercial redevelopment. This isn't new development. This is redevelopment of existing businesses that have either been there or closed. Many of us can remember when the Foxborough Company was there, and it employed 400 or 500 people. somehow or another, Route 18 dealt with that level of traffic. Obviously it's increased, but, we will take all the steps that the town can take to try to identify the impacts and remediate them as they come. But I think it's something we all need to be cognizant of. These are all individual projects that will be evaluated on their individual merits as well. What we're trying to do is create a opportunity for that growth in this district.
There's a lot of focus on Route 18. Does that study include the impacts to the surrounding neighborhoods? Like this gentleman mentioned Highland Street. I live on Thatcher Street. Those streets in general are very busy. I mean, cars go flying down there like no tomorrow. In those areas, there's a lot of children, and the big concern is the safety, not only for adults and stuff, but also for the children that are in that area. So
no, absolutely. As part of these studies, what triggers a road safety line, and the condition of the roadway, the walkability opportunities, things like that. But those all come with costs. And one of the things that a project like, or an opportunity like this does for the town, is it increases the opportunity for future grant funding and things like that for the town, because as housing increases, housing projects and affordable housing is created, it emphasizes the need for more traffic control, sidewalks, development. Obviously, part of this project will likely see the reconstruction of sidewalks in that area along Route 18. Likely will also then lead into the opportunity for some sidewalk construction on Highland Street, which then branches out. It's an entire connecting system.
It's bad enough as it is now, and now you're adding detours galore and everything else. I mean, kids just run across the street.
Yeah. With these projects too, the bigger commercial projects, you have designated truck routes. You'll have traffic enforcement opportunities and things like that. It's all part of the individual applicant studies when they're proposed to the town. The town still has an opportunity to review all those things individually. This doesn't take any of that control away.
Will there be another exit onto Oak Street?
Yeah, another exit onto?
Well, there isn't one there now.
Correct. So my understanding, as the applicant has proposed that project, there would be an access egress to Winter Street for the 80 or the 40 units of townhouses that are created. It will not be a cut through for Route 18 to Winter Street.
Good question, I believe, for the town manager. Can you speak to the estimated net revenue for the town? You stated that at the $11 million project, without betterments, without the grants, that the price, I believe, per year was $990,000, which in my head leaves us with $710,000 in net revenue. Can you give us an estimated net revenue with betterments, with grants, as to what the town can look at?
Yeah. Right. Yes.
And if we needed to elaborate on that, I know Paul, our town assessor's here as well. She can go into a little bit of detail on where some of those numbers came from as well.
If we can get back to slide 11, thank you, great. There's your difference right there. Obviously, the more money that we can get in for betterments, the more money we can get in for grants, the lower the principal and interest payments. So that projected, if we can bring the amount by half down, so that between grants and betterments, half of the gross funding can be supported by that, then we bring it down by half. So we're down to $500,000 per year for principal and interest at the start. That would leave 1.2. And I mean, I wasn't getting into the weeds on this, but the amount that we're getting is just for those 4 projects. And that amount, like your own property taxes, that amount will increase by 2.5% per year approximately. So that as we're paying down the bond, the amount of taxes that we'll gain from those properties will continue to go up inch by inch, setting aside any other gains we would have from additional development. I don't know if Paula has anything else to add about the 1.7, but again, this wasn't me working backwards and writing numbers on an envelope. She has comparables to look at in other communities, be able to look at the cost, look at the market values of various properties and buildings and such to come up with that 1.7.
I'll just briefly, all I did when we were looking at these potential projects, we took, there's four large projects, and I was able to cost them out through through my system, and get a rough idea of what they're all worth. And the total value, just to give you a rough idea, the 100-bed, it's like a mental health hospital at Compass, would be estimated about $13 million. 3.5 million for 3 industrial warehouses. 30 million for this large 400 square foot warehouse. So I was able to take all those and then the housing project and get that large. I came up with 115 million in extra value, and then you divided it. I just used this tax rate of this year. So that's the additional revenue that will come in. And I stayed as conservative, basically. I mean, I don't know what the final, what really will be in this kind of hospital that they build, or the facility. I kept it basic, this 400,000. I looked at Cisco and kind of compared that, didn't take the refrigerator one, took the other one. So these are low estimates, and I mean, I was impressed and surprised by how much additional value actual tax money we will bring in. And then it'll continue to go up a little bit every year like everything else does. But yeah, so any questions anyone can ask me, give me a call.
Before we see if there's any more questions, we'll put this gentleman on the spot a little bit. So from Capital, Dave Walsh is in the audience. So Dave has been a part of this team as well. And I thought it'd be, from his perspective, from Capital, he's, actually, I'm sorry, he's on finance, but he's a liaison for Capital. I keep getting that screwed up. But he's been in town a long time. He's seen quite a few projects come down the pike, and I think him and Charlie, I know him and Charlie met with the school committee last week and spoke about this, so I thought it'd be good for, Dave, if you don't mind, just kind of give your perspective of the project.
Well, thank you, Peter. It's interesting. I've been in town for 32 years or so, and as a selectman on the finance committee, on sewage feasibility study committee at one point in time, and the same theme we keep hearing over and over is we need some economic development. What are we going to do for our area? What are our sources? We're landlocked. We can't do this. The only thing that supports certain kind of industry in town here. Foxborough Company closed. We tried to tie in our sewerage at that time with the pumping station at the Foxborough Company. The rules had just changed at the time for freshwater discharge, and we weren't able to do that. And we looked at the sewer district here and putting sewerage in the downtown section. There are so many things that have been explored over a period of time, but it all came at a big cost to the taxpayers of the town. And it was just something the town, I could see, they couldn't burden. Taxes, everybody's complaining, taxes are too high, this, that, the other thing. Every year at budget time, we look and we turn and we say, we don't have enough revenue, what are we going to do? I mean, I remember years we've had, well, you can put so much in, but then we have to take so much out. We have to do a 2.5% reduction, we have to do this, we have to do that. I personally, and I'm not speaking for the Finance Committee or the Capital Committee, from my experience in town, I see this as a real good opportunity. When we can come up with something that self-funds, that's big. It also gives us the opportunity for that commercial development and growth that we've been struggling for years to come up with in this town. And we just can't do it. And every time we explored a project, the problem was sewerage. We don't have sewerage. Our infrastructure can't support this. We've worked with Brockton, and I'm going way back, Peter, probably before you started working with them, on trying to get into sewerage in Brockton for years. And way back with the sewage feasibility study, when we were trying to do that, their infrastructure was so poor and leaking, they couldn't add anybody. They wouldn't let anybody in. So now, after a lot of hard work by a lot of folks, they've made infrastructure repairs. The world has changed. Housing is very important. I know that, you know, my own son couldn't afford a house in East Bridgewater. He had to go buy a house in Bridgewater. You know, I would have loved for him to stay here. And his mother would have too. I got to say that too, all right? But, you know, this affordable housing is not low-income housing. It's affordable housing. And it's a good thing to do. I mean, we need to have places for people to afford to live in. Your family, my family. Preference for East Bridgewater residents. I think that there's also some preference for veterans, police, fire. I mean, I talk to the different chiefs, and people who come into the departments have to live in a different town. They can't afford to live in East Bridgewater. And then we lose folks because now they've got a better job someplace else making money because that's where they can afford to live. So I see this as a great opportunity. And after 30 years of wondering how we're going to develop, where we're going to grow, what can we do, you don't get handed a project that really funds itself. And so I see this as a great opportunity. Every project has its, we call them downfalls. Are we going to be able to control the traffic? Are the police going to need more people? Is the fire department going to need more people? What's going to happen to our schools? This is one project I have to say that I've seen everybody at the tables having multiple discussions about this and how this can be handled. I think somebody said, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chief Herron, or whatever, is the budget you proposed this year has the additional staff that had been cut many years ago. So it gets you back to kind of normal where we were a few years ago, but you're not really seeing any additional staff for this project. Is correct?
So with the exception of hiring one firefighter that for a day shift position, which was fire prevention a few years back, we haven't added manpower for 15 years.
Right.
So what's happening is my people being burnt out because we're busy, and the calls for service have exceeded what we can do with 5 people on duty. And during the day, we are extremely busy. At night, not so much. So what happens is we have 4 working groups. They work 24 hours on, 48 hours off, 24 hours on, 96 hours off. All the days will be filled to 6. The nights, part of the budget thing was to drop to 5 on some shifts in order to save money. Because it would cost about $300-something thousand to do this, and I'm able to do it, I can't have the numbers offhand, for 110, 140, somewhere around there, Dave. And half of that's coming from ambulance revenue. So with this project in mind, and the increased calls I anticipate, we should be good. That's for this project. Going down, down the road.
Right, you mentioned
nothing
the
to do
other
with
development
this.
and stuff going on.
But we run, I don't want to call it a hiring freeze, but for 15 years we operated the way we're operating today, and our calls have increased 53%. So it was, regardless of this project, the time has come for us to add manpower.
Right.
So
One of the
say one other thing. Someone mentioned maybe we might need a new piece of equipment. We will not need new equipment. What we have in this town, we have 3 engines, a tower truck, 3 ambulances. One of the engines is a reserve. One of the ambulances is a reserve. And it's done that way so if one of those trucks goes down, mainly an ambulance, we don't lose revenue, because if I call mutual aid, all that billing goes to the town that comes in. We want that money. If we lose a fire truck for repairs, we have a fire truck that fills that gap. So
Tim, what that might be coming from is, I'm gonna go back a little bit in time. We didn't have a fire truck that could go higher than 2 stories before. Do you remember that?
well, we had a ladder truck that, yeah, it didn't really work
Yeah,
for a
but we
number
do
of
now,
years.
so we're covered, right?
Now, mind you, we bought the old tower truck 24 years ago, and it was an 85-foot ladder truck, and I just put a new tower truck in service that was bought through ambulance revenue, not even through taxation, that has a much longer reach, much higher, and is more state-of-the-art, so.
And so we covered this all at a large level right now, but also when we talk about other town things, talking to Mr. Haynes and stuff, there's also additional, the water that they're going to be supplying, we're going to be getting revenue for that water. If there are additional ambulance calls, you'll be getting additional revenue for that.
Correct.
So I see it as a great combination of commercial development and a housing need that we have in town. And to be able to accomplish all those in this one container, I think is a great opportunity. I got to commend the board and all the departments for working so hard and for so long on this process. It's not something, I think Peter let you know in the beginning, this was not something that just came up overnight. He said it's been for a couple of years, since 2017. I can tell you we were working with Brockton in 2003. And back to something that Charlie says is, we want to be good partners with them, because if there is an opportunity down the road to advance this and it makes sense, we may want to take advantage of that. But remember, at the same time, Brockton will have their priorities to take care of any economic development and housing needs in their community too. So we've been granted 75,000 gallons, and that's what we're granted. And when we do go back, it's not as simple as going back and saying, hey, we need some more. It has to be approved in, 20,000 gallon increments or something like that by the board of the councilman and the mayor. So there are a lot of safeguards in place here, and I think a lot has been looked at here, and I just want to thank everybody in the town for all the work they've done on this. But we've been asking, for at least my 30 years here, for economic development, and here's our opportunity. So I'd just like to make sure everybody considers this and come to town meeting and ask the questions that, if you don't have the answers tonight, ask them. All right?
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you, David.
So Dave, I can agree with you. I've been with the fire department for 31 years, and every year we don't have enough commercial base in this town. And this is a golden opportunity, in my opinion.
Thanks, Chief. Unless there's one more back there, sure. Yep. Yeah, we always have time.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Lynch, and I've been a resident of East Bridgewater since 1987. And I started my career at the Metro South Chamber of Commerce in Brockton, and I understand the great need for increasing our commercial tax base to balance out the residential taxes. And I'm not an economic mastermind, but I do understand that. So I want to say that I commend you all for working with the Brockton City Councilors and kind of thinking regional, because when I was working at the Metro South Chamber of Commerce, we were hosting many meetings, and I didn't often see representatives from East Bridgewater thinking regionally. So I have to commend you for, Peter, getting involved with the OCPC, and it's nice to see you thinking regional. So I commend you on this comprehensive plan and for thinking regional. That being said, I need a new septic in East Bridgewater, in the area of Oregon Street and West Union. And maybe you were at those meetings before I was there, so I'm sure you were thinking regionally too, sir. But I need a new septic, and I really want to buy my parents' house, but I've been quoted first $80,000 for a septic, and I thought that was ludicrous, so I got a new engineer, and they talked about $90,000 most recently, simply due to the clay soil, the elevation of the land, and the high water table next to the river. So as a first-time home buyer, that's a tough pill to swallow. So maybe I'll need that 40B housing. It's a lot to wrap my head around. So I heard you when you said that the downtown at this time is not part of this plan. So I guess as a voter, I need to hear a little bit more about hope for the future of expansion before I can, you know, myself, we're drowning in that area and in that neighborhood. We are drowning. I've got multiple pits and all kinds of water issues, and I know that some of the businesses who have been here for a really long time are struggling as well. So they're not part of this plan, you know. Your Bluestone Banks, your Skinner Sugar House, as far as I can see, you don't see them in this plan. So I guess what I need to hear a little bit more about is expansions for the future and additional capacity for these surrounding neighborhoods. I guess you got my vote, and I support you because I know that we need to increase the commercial tax base, but I just need to hear a little bit more about the future of opportunity of expansion. So once we hit that 75,000, you know, what's next, and is my neighborhood part of a potential footprint or not? Sorry, that's a lot to unpack, but you know, I'm trying to make plans for my future and my family's future, and I can't really see East Bridgewater as being the next step. I'd like to hold on to the property, but it's a real challenge. Thank you.
Thank you. So, yeah, that's a lot. But I can tell you this. So this is what I would call the second large project that the town has taken on when you start talking about SOAR. Again, to Dave's point earlier, you know, the soil's all over town. Me and Carol were together last night after our meeting, and we had two residents, one on Plymouth Street and another one on Whitman Street, that said, you know, similar. I can't get what I need to get done with the system that I can put in here when you're coming, you know, down this way. I can tell you this, you know, we've obviously spoke in the past, and probably in the future we'll talk even more. The next step, if once we get through this process, and if we're successful, or even if we're not successful, will be to start to look at the opportunities that we have with the wastewater treatment plant at the school. I can tell you this, to try to get this system, and people a lot smarter than me sitting over there will probably say the same thing, to get Brockton's pipeline down to the town and get through rivers and you know, ways that bridges that on Forge and things of that nature, the expense would outweigh any particular increase the town could see, and we would be back to what David had said, a large increase to the citizens in town. Now, we do have opportunities, and this will be the next, this is the third project, and John Haynes is smiling, I'm sure, back there, saying this is SOB. What we need to look at next is the other skid. So we have an opportunity for more room with another skid to our wastewater treatment plant. Again, I need to get through this portion of my project, and I currently have, I think it is 11 months, 12 days, 32 weeks, you know, I mean, I got the countdown for that, so I'm on a timetable to get that done, but it's on the docket, and like I said. So, and I can bring John down one more time, because he was much heavily more involved in the school project, and he'll give you the actual terminology that will help you understand what the opportunities for that wastewater treatment plant over at the school is.
I'll just add, I'll echo Peter's comment. I mean, the downtown is not an area that has been ignored. The downtown is actually was what we had envisioned would be the second phase. But when opportunity knocks, it's our responsibility to take advantage of an opportunity. So the wastewater treatment plant that was on-site treatment facility that was built here as part of this construction of the new school was sized with the, and Peter talked about this beginning, for 30,000 gallons a day per flow of treatment capacity. Incorporating the school, we knew we had an issue with the fire station that had to be addressed, and the central school from a municipal standpoint, but we also saw an opportunity to look at the downtown district. So we were required to construct that 30,000 as the actual plant, the treatment facility. But again, when the opportunity availed itself, a few of us said, what if we just oversized this a little bit so that we built the facility? The facility had to be the size it was, but let's put all this infrastructure in underground so the tanking is there, well, I'll take one step back. In order to, because the site that we currently sit on, the soils weren't good enough to accommodate a septic system here for this school, so we had to build an on-site treatment plant. But the effluent, the discharge, the water's discharge, is pumped to the middle school where we found suitable soils. And we found suitable soils to the point that they could accommodate over 100,000 gallons of discharge per day. So the water that's treated, the wastewater that's treated in our plant here is actually pumped up Central Street and discharged at the middle school. So we have discharge capacity. That's our limit. That's our limiting factor throughout town. We don't have soils that can accommodate the discharge of flow. So when this facility was constructed, we looked at that opportunity and said, there's growth opportunity up there, and if we can make it happen, let's try to have a little bit of foresight. So we constructed exactly what we needed to do to deal with our existing conditions, with the idea of let's also look at the other facilities that are existing, and the CVS opportunity happened upon us, and that's how we ended up sewering that 1,800 feet of Route 18. The building, though, and the tankage and all the infrastructure is in place to essentially slide another processing plant into the building that's right out back here, which would increase our capacity to be able to treat 60,000 gallons of flow a day. 60,000 gallons of flow is considerable. It's, you know, in line with the amount of discharge that we're talking about for the project in front of us next Monday night for the new district. That comes with cost, obviously. We're probably just for the package, the additional package treatment facility, you're probably in the $2 to $2.5 million just to bring in the processing equipment. But we've already done all the infrastructure work that's necessary. Now what needs to happen, and this is the kind of the planning aspect, is we've been involved, again, we're actually working with Weston Sampson. We secured a grant through New England NUI-PIC, and talking about acronyms. But we utilized that several years ago, and we did a downtown study. So we've looked at all the opportunities for the downtown study. At the same time, the town has been working for several years to try to secure grant funding to finish the cleanup of the Eastern State Steel precision engineering facility. And we actually, have for 5 years been moving towards that. You know, every year you're really close. Next time you'll get that grant.
Well, I promise not to bring that up to someone. But since you mentioned it, what's going on at Eastern State Steel?
So currently Eastern State Steel is
Holding area?
Tax title property. The town doesn't actually own it. What you're seeing as far as people seeing construction there is that's really right now being used as a stockyard for the PA Landers Construction Company, who are doing the road work on Route 18. So they're just bringing gravel in and out, curbing, drainage structures. When that's said and done, that area will be restored back to green space, to lawn. So it's not going to have any. That's not related to actually any development of Eastern State Steel. That's just it was an open space that could be used as a contractor yard while they did this project. With the hopes are, with all the additional federal funding that we're seeing, as I alluded to before, grants help us get grants. So when this project comes to fruition with all hopes, it's going to put us in a much better position as we move forward for additional grants. But we already know, we just received some notification last week that the governor has issued another bill for APA funding called the Forward. Its acronym again is called Forward, I can't remember all the particular, but it's construction funding. And they've recognized that there are so many projects that need to be done. They're never going to be all funded through the existing MassWorks grants and one-stop for growth opportunities. So he has actually proposed allocating funds, and in that package, the two projects we're talking about, which are equal $750,000 in grant funding, are, I don't like the term earmarked, but they're identified to fund those two needs. This is getting really complicated for anybody that's not interested in, you know, and wanted to know about the North Bedford Street project. But what that will do will give us an actual opportunity to get that site cleaned up. Cleaned up as far as make it a clean site, make it a site where an investor looks at the property and says, this has a value, the X factors that are unknown have been addressed, and now there's a redevelopment opportunity there. It all goes back to redevelopment. It's essentially taking these sites that are underutilized and redeveloping them, and with that comes growth. It doesn't address your exact concern, but what I've said for years is the projects pull the pipe. So when that site is cleaned and cleared for redevelopment in the market and where we live right now, that's an incredible opportunity for mixed-use redevelopment. Some light retail, some, again, perhaps affordable housing component on top. Your downtown center, it revitalizes your downtown. We can talk for hours about, regional planning concepts and things like that. But that will essentially create the opportunity to pull the pipe up into the center, which will then give you the opportunity to address the wastewater concerns you have for that area. Eastern State Steel is actually the abandoned, you wouldn't even, across from the post office, exactly. And that's an area, and that, when that's done, I see that as another opportunity to revitalize our downtown.
Which businesses have already taken advantage of the excess capacity that was built into the system? Obviously, CVS tied in?
CVS is tied in.
Okay.
Subway. Dewhurst, and most recently, Carriage Crossing. The entirety of Carriage Crossing, yes, is now tied in. And that would be phase 2 of the downtown district.
Yep. So, just to add a quick note to that, what we need in helping get some of those things done as partners, residents, because that funding comes from state and, state level, and we need to reach out to those state reps and senators to advocate for us. So, we'll talk in more detail with you as soon as I get Monday over with. So, is there anyone else? I think we've kind of hit a lot of hot buttons, and I appreciate it. Okay, yep.
Tell us on this map instead of that, because those are a little small, exactly where the construction is?
And then you've got the same copy in your handout there. Yep. Okay. Peace. So we can go by. Steve will go by color coordination to tell you exactly where these places are. So I've got it right here, Steve. Yep.
Slide 8. Yeah, can you go to, yeah, that's it right there. So the actual construction, let's see if this works, see if my hand's any steadier. All right, so the green line is the intended pipelines. So that's kind of, the majority of the construction is in the middle of this undeveloped area here. So most of the work is going to be, it's not going to have a lot of disruption to traffic. It's not going to have any disruption to traffic to get the primary infrastructure in place. So again, starting with a manhole on Highland Street, it's in here somewhere, right up here, working its way back and down to the pump station here. And then as far as the street work, once the force main, so the pumps are going to collect and then pump it back out, and then the work in the street will be the force main in Winter Street, Summer Street, and then onto Thatcher Street. So that's where, most of the, that's where all of the road work for the sewer infrastructure will take place. And I will say that the force main pipes are, it's similar to installing a water main, so the construction moves pretty quickly. So, that helps limit the disruption. The quicker you can get through the area, the better you can limit it. And it's also a tighter trench, so we won't be taking up the whole road during construction. There will certainly be opportunity for traffic to get by, but it will impact traffic. So hopefully that answers the question of where.
Sort of. So
You want visuals, like I want me to tell you, like landmarks in those
I'm
areas?
wondering about the neighborhoods that are going to be affected.
Okay.
So we're talking Winter Street, Summer Street, and Highland, or maybe Tardy Terrace, Captain's Way. Any of those neighborhoods will be affected?
So the Winter Street, Summer Street would be the pipe that we have to bring in, and it all comes in the back. So visually, let's, everybody knows Peaceful Meadows, right? Let's start there, okay? So we come back into East Bridgewater. There's right now currently some buildings out there right now where our contractor bays. So that's, the front half of that project, and then it goes out towards the back. I think the back end, you may be able to see Captain's Way is out further there, and then it goes down the middle of all that property till it gets to Highland Street. So a lot of that infrastructure, if you look at, like I said earlier, I think I pointed out the car wash that's there. So that you see one building's already there that's in the district, and then there'll be another one out back, which was the Speedway area, which I'm sure Captain's Way will be very happy to hear about. And then as we get across the street to Highland, we'll bring the pipe just across Highland Street. It will be on Equity to bring the pipe the rest of the way over to the left of Compass Medical. That's where that building is going to be out towards the back area.
Yep, it's right behind Compass Medical.
Right. Yep.
What's sort of behind where Foxborough or Hardin?
Yeah, out towards that area. Yeah.
Okay. Second question is environmental impact studies. Have those been done?
So that's part of the permitting process, so it hasn't been done at this point.
And the traffic studies don't get done by the Mass DOT until when? Sorry.
Well, so for instance, Rhino is already, a traffic study was done as part of that project. So the individual projects, as they come online, so for instance, the affordable housing project would require a separate traffic study. Anything down at Compass and Equity would require a separate traffic study. So those are done as the proposals are brought in to the planning board, to the zoning board of appeals and such. And we can even have, if necessary, or have somebody else review those traffic studies. John mentioned, for instance, that it had already been done once, and we can continue to do that to verify the figures.
I guess my question is there a different traffic study that is conducted by us, right? And then there's a separate traffic study done by Mass DOT. I guess that's my confusion.
I understand what you're asking. I don't know that MassDOT will do a separate one in that we will obviously, if they feel that they need to verify the figures just as we would want to for the individual traffic studies for the individual projects, they have every right to do so. I mean, they are, working with OCPC, they're constantly monitoring traffic flows. They'll look, periodically looking at the Highland Street intersection, for instance, to see what the wait times are for each of the, anybody getting into that intersection, how long they have to wait. So they're monitoring traffic flows, they're monitoring intersections and seeing are things getting worse, are things about the same, but I don't think there's an overall study of the corridor other than what John and I have mentioned is I think we're not going to see that tomorrow, we're not going to see that next week, but now we're on their radar, working with OCPC, working with MassDOT to say, as I mentioned, the corridor all the way from the Whitman line down to Bridgewater Center, to say all of Route 18 needs to be looked at. In terms of intersections, turning lanes, I'm not going to advocate for 1 lane versus 2 lane or anything like that, but they need to look at the entire road layout, the sidewalks, everything else, drainage, because it's obvious, you know, when just a couple of months ago, we met at Compass Medical just to talk with the folks there who own the property and say, you know, just a very brief overview. And I went up to Peaceful Meadows just to go and get some ice cream. And driving along Route 18, I went back and I called John or emailed John and said, are we looking at this? I mean, in the sense of, even aside from the developments that we're talking about, Route 18 in that corridor needs to be better than it is right now. So that, I think, prompted some starting points. You know, I talked to Charlie Kilmer over at OCPC, it was the same thing. And so just in the last few weeks, you know, we've said we need to get on board, on the list, on the schedule to say it's not next tomorrow, it's not next week, but that, you know, long term, for East Bridgewater and for the region as a whole, we need to make Route 18 a better road for everybody, for the residents who are here, for commuters, for people who are coming to do business here in town. We want to encourage those people. I know every encouragement means, well, there's additional traffic. Well, we've all talked about those pros and cons. You're balancing all those things. If you want a broader tax base, you need additional commercial growth. If you want additional commercial growth, well, you are going to have traffic. Is it worth that trade-off? And those are some of the decisions you're going to be making in the next week or so.
Thank you.
And I can tell you, being a delegate on OCPC for the last couple of years, you know, we've got a strong voice with them for transportation in general. And the meeting Charlie just spoke about was a meeting that we had with Equity regarding getting together with OCPC and seeing if they could utilize BAT buses or other means of getting people in and out. Because, look, East Bridgewater just doesn't use Compass Medical, right? All the surrounding towns do as well, and we just got to find ways to curb that. All right? Yep.
One last question. Earlier, you mentioned that surrounding towns of Brockton had asked Brockton for similar help that East Bridgewater did. What was it that East Bridgewater either offered to them, or why did they say yes to us?
Charlie, I think what well, I don't think, in the conversations I had with the Mayor Sullivan, you know, this project, aside from what they'll collect in fees, obviously for the sewage that goes in, which I would assume $500,000-$600,000 a year annually based on what we're presenting, maybe, I'm guessing. But aside from that, you know, with the influx of homes that we're proposing in the housing, as well as the jobs in both the white and blue collar labor, so to speak, they see potential for the town, the city, to also get some of those housing opportunities as well as some of those jobs. You know, and Mayor Carpenter's, it was Mayor Carpenter to begin with, Mayor Sullivan, in my discussions with him also, you know, he's interested in regionalizing, but it has to make sense. And he's basically committed to us the fact that these projects do make sense. Maybe the ones in the future that we have to propose to him, if we need additional flow, might not make sense. Maybe he's not even in the seat at that time, who knows? But for right now, that's the opinion of the mayor and I would assume the council, because we went through, you know, 11 or 12 council heads when we had to get this approved. So, you know, we had further discussions. You could probably go online, and I think they discussed it a little bit. We met with the city council on 2 occasions, and on the financial point, and then on the vote. So you may be able to, you know, get on Brockton's website and hear some of the comments that came from some of those council people as well. Anyone else? Going once? Oh, yeah, listen, I thank everybody that came down. Again, we've got this live as well as videotaped. I'm sure EBCAM will send it out to as many people. At the end of the day, what do we need? We need you to come out and vote. You know, this board has identified what the plan was. We've put what we think is the best opportunity in front of the voters and the residents in town, and now it's just up to them to educate themselves a little bit further as they listen to this tape and look at some of the things. If there are any further questions over the course of the next 5, 6 days, whatever it may be, you can certainly let Charlie know, as well as myself or Carol or David or any committee member, as well as I'm sure post on social media. So let us know. We want to answer every question. We want to be as transparent as we possibly can about the opportunity and what we hope to do. But at the end of the day, on Monday night, it's up to the voters whether they want to take advantage of this opportunity. But I thank you all. Oh, yep.
Is there any companies like the Foxtrot company that are showing any interest in this?
So Hardex is taking a percentage of the building. In my discussions with Jim Knight, who is the facilities manager over there, they have currently Hardhank's still working. I'm not sure when their contract is up, and they have some administrative offices for Compass as well. Some of their, but it's not. Is it utilized to its full capacity? No, not at all. Not from what I've been told, anyways. So, you know, and this further, I don't want to, we'd be here for 3 weeks if I went into what my thoughts about what's going to happen in this area over the course of the next 3 to 5 years. You know, but, you know, we'll just have to take those steps as they come. And hopefully we'll see the fruits of what we're preparing here for over the course of that time and get some things in town done that we desperately need to get done. Well, good night. Again, thank you, everybody. If you have any further questions, certainly reach out to us prior to Monday, and I hope to see everybody Monday night.